What's up YouTube, Droll here from Zephyr Wargames, and today, leading up to this weekend's Nationals, I'm going to bring you a rundown of 10 of the decks that you need to watch out for when you're going to a national event or of course YCS as it currently stands. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. Now, this list won't be in any particularly direct order. They're just all decks that you need to be aware of, or you could even choose to play as well to catch your opponent off guard. So, let's start out with the blatantly obvious ones, and we'll start off with Kashtira's. Now, Kashtira's have survived the ban list. Well, technically not survived the ban list, but have able to skate through before a ban list to hit the Nationals. Now, it is currently on the day of recording this, Wednesday the 24th of May. I would be amazed if Konami dropped a ban list. Funnily enough, they might drop one exactly as I say that. Before Nationals, or even if they did drop one, I'd be amazed if it even became in effect before Nationals this weekend. So UK Nationals is the one I'm referring to. There are still a couple of YCSs in America as well, so I do not expect that to change. Now, Kashtira's have kind of gone in a different adaptive route. This is what makes the deck so incredibly powerful. It can still utilize the banishing effect of something like Rise Heart alongside a D-Shifter that deals with its direct competitors in the form of Super Heavy Samurai and Pearly, along with the rest. On top of that as well, if it really wanted to, it could revert back to the zone lock capabilities. So this, in my opinion, is probably the strongest deck around at this exact moment in time because it has the space to play multiple hand traps if it wants to. It can bring it all the way back down to the basics of just Rise Heart Pass, as well as being able to build a full zone lock and gain the knowledge of their opponent's deck through the extra deck using stuff like the Mind Hacker. I would be amazed if this deck survives the next ban list, as we are officially awaiting for it, and I do expect that they will be using the data from these nationals, from nationals and the YCSs leading up to the overall Euros and everything else to Worlds as a template of what will get hit in the upcoming meta. As much as I would love to continue to play Kashtira's the way I am playing it, but which is no zone lock and don't really care about Mind Hacker, and I only want Mind Hacker to be hit, I would be amazed if that is the only card to change. Then let's move on to the next deck. Now, I would say that this is on par with the Pearlies, but Super Heavy Samurai. This is a deck that I expect to be highly represented at Nats and everything else. The deck is just crazy consistent. It has so many one-card starters. It has the option to play so many different hand traps. This deck single-handedly has said to the format, you're going to need to main Droll. Now, I'm not saying that Droll is the only deck that Droll is good against, because it can actually be good against Kashtira's and everything else. Keep in mind, you cannot activate Droll if D-Shifter is in play because it needs to go directly to the graveyard, which is why Kashtira's have a bit of an edge over something like Super Heavy Samurai because they can't play without their graveyard, which is why, again, Cash is the top deck. On top of that, the fact that it can constantly end its board on 2, if not 3 Omni-Negates, or 2 Omni-Negates plus the ability of something like Appaloosa, backed up by 4 to 5 hand traps, is absolutely insane. The introduction of stuff like Wakashi, and of course the bike from the most recent set, has just taken this deck up 10 levels. It's gone from a deck that used to put insanely fat boss monsters in defense that could attack with defense and could push for OTKs into a full-on one-card wombo combo, play around as many hand traps as you like, and people are changing the way the deck plays so that it can start dealing with Droll Pass, and it can also deal with everything else backed up by 1,000,001 hand traps. The next one that I would say is on the same level as, of course, the Super Heavy Samurai, of course, is Pearly. Now, this again took a massive notch up on the ladder thanks to the brand new support in the most recent set of Syac. The fact that it revolves around these level 1 monsters that can just become fat stacked XYZs that are all protected from numerous effects, as well as the capabilities with stuff like my friend Pearly to draw multiple cards, anything from 3 to 6. And I thought drawing off of the back of Runic Fountain was annoying enough as it is. A deck like this that brings on an incredibly powerful towers, quite like how Super Heavy Samurai has said everyone's going to need to possibly main Droll, Pearly are basically saying everyone's going to need to start playing a card called Santa Claus, or just a way to out a massive fat towers. And this is what I love about this format, is every deck can beat the other. Something like Kashtira's can't always rely on a Rise Heart Pass because a single the main decks of stuff like Droll or the main decks of a Kaiju outs that board straight away, and then they need to fall back. Same can be said for Pearly. I feel Super Heavy Samurai is the only one that doesn't fall under the Pearly effects, so the main deck Kaiju, because they're able to set up more than one negate, and they've got the fact stacks of multiple hand traps backing them up, but it also gives them the capability of losing to the generic towers that Pearly, like, they can set up as many Omni negates as they want, but if they can't stop that Pearly, that fat towers on the board constantly drawing cards, it's not going anywhere. Then we're going to carry on moving through. Now, I wouldn't say that this is the... Well, it possibly is, actually. It's got a lot of tops at the moment, and that is, of course, Branded. Now, again, quite like the previous ones, bar Cached Heroes, Branded have had a massive step up thanks to Guiding Quem, the Virtuous, Lulu Walif, you name it. The fact that they still have the Gimmick Puppet lock, yes, it's a little bit risky, whether you're going to main it or side it, is still incredibly powerful. And when you're being able to use a Gimmick Puppet lock and then rock a card like Quem, which is constantly going to allow you to regain resource back from the graveyard to the field, no matter what it is, as long as a card leaves the extra deck, yours or your opponent's, is incredibly powerful. The deck does have one massive weakness, and that is, of course, Ash Blossom, but the decks and players have started to adapt a lot more, dealing with all of the multiple hand traps. Of course, Droll and Lockbird is a massive factor, but I feel the one thing that Branded does have the benefit of on the other three is that it can technically play under D-Shifter, it can even play it itself. It still has the capabilities to play around Droll and Lockbird and not get massively hit. So again, that's where the balance comes into play. There's not a single deck here that goes, I don't care about all these hand traps and board breakers being set up. A lot of them are, okay, I can play these board breakers, these hand traps, these floodgates to deal with those decks, and I can counter and play to counter those hand traps. It's just a very nice balance, which I really, really do enjoy. Now, the next one for 5 and 6 I'm going to do is a twofer. And what I mean by that is it's basically the same variants. So we've got Runics. Now, off of the back of the Runics, I'm going to be talking about the Naturia version and also the Sprite version. I feel the Sprite version definitely has a massive power capability in comparison. The fact that it can set up stuff like the Gigantics, it's got the capabilities to gain life, to burn life, and what is being utilized the most is stuff like Crush Card and, of course, Eradicator Virus is incredibly prominent in the Sprite version. If you flip over to Naturia, they on the other side basically say, I'm going to make Nat Beast, or I'm going to make Nat Beast backed up with a Baron, and then my cards in the form of Mole Cricket and Camella are constantly going to be allowing me to interact with you, whether that be through Sunflower Negates, whether that be through Tree Mills and Searches, and then all of that's going to be backed up by Runics. They have the capabilities to gain life. They have the capabilities to OTK you and slow you down as much as they possibly want to. And then, of course, they all fall back on that annoying Runic Fountain with Hugin, incredibly accessible and constantly going to be able to draw cards and replenish their hands, alongside with consistency cards or, heck, even more hand traps. Then we move on to the outer side of the main core meta, and these are all decks that are, I would tell you, not to sleep on. Do not go to this event and not have some form of knowledge of these type of decks. You will need to be able to face them. The big benefit you will get is most of the side deck cards you're going to be using to deal with the previous 6 decks I've just mentioned will then be utilized against these remaining 4. So we're going to start off with one of my favorites that did get another boost thanks to Syac, and that is Mech. Maths has never been so cool. So Mechs are incredibly powerful. Going first, they have access to Heat Soul, which is going to give them constant ways of being able to draw. Quite like something like Super Heavy Samurais, they have massive access to a whole arsenal of hand traps, not to mention the ability to rip cards from field and hand through Mech Superfractorial, as well as direct access to their own mini towers that can help push for OTK plays and access code, as if it needed more. Unlike Super Heavy Samurai, they don't have as many one-card starters, but thanks to Firewall Defender, they do have another direct one-card combo that can help them build a board and again cause their opponent a lot of issues. The deck like this can main deck something like Nibiru, Droll and Lockbird, and still be able to play around with and utilize to max potential. This is why Mech is definitely one that you need to be aware of. It's probably the more common of the others alongside the next one that I'm going to mention, but it's still very, very powerful and will cause a lot of issues. It is just wombo combo, high level of intensity, high level of aggression, and a lot of hand traps to back it up. The next one we're going to talk about is Dragon Link. Now, again, these are all pre-Syac updates. So when you have access in a Dragon Link deck to something along the lines of Chaos Angel, which is an insanely powerful level 10 synchro that the deck can make with greatest of ease, and be able to say, my cards can't be destroyed by battle, when you're trying to deal with fat stack boss monsters like the Link 5 Borrelend, and of course stuff like Savage, Baron, and then Chaos Angel, it just makes your task so much harder. The best thing about Dragon Link as well is it can play through a number of hand traps. The weakness is that it does falter to something like a Floodgate hand trap of Droll and Lockbird, which is why it's not further up the list, but it's still something you shouldn't go into an event with and not know how to play against. The most players will do their research, and this is why I feel that something like this Nationals is going to be a little bit tricky for people, because I feel the meta is just so wide open. You can narrow it down to maybe 5 or 6 decks that you'll constantly see along the top tables, but then do not be surprised if you see Mechs, Dragon Links, and the remaining 2 decks that I'm going to mention sneaking their way into that top cut and causing people a lot of issues if they have not prepared for them. So the penultimate deck I'm going to talk about is, of course, Labyrinth. Now, you'll notice that a lot of the decks I've mentioned here, bar maybe the Runic variant, don't really count as control. Heck, very few of those actually have back row control plays. You could arguably put Trap Tricks in this area here, but I feel that Labyrinth with the correct pilot is a little bit stronger, if not more stronger, than Trap Tricks. And what makes Labyrinth so good is their ability to play floodgates in the form of Gozens, Rivalries if they wanted to, and of course mainly skill drain, meaning that it doesn't matter how your wombo combo has gone, if your effects are not being able to activate on the field, they are not going anywhere. This does have a little bit of a struggle against something like Ash Blossom, but they have multiple ways in Big Welcome Labyrinth and Welcome Labyrinth to gain access to their monsters. They can also hold back their boss monster in the form of Lady Labyrinth, which can cause a lot of issues being able to get access to stuff like Eradicator, which can instantly wipe out a Runic deck, or possibly even cause huge amounts of issues for the scales of Super Heavy Samurai. Do not sleep on other control decks as well. You can consider Dark Worlds, but I feel that with Droll and Lockbird in the format, and definitely going to be in most people's main decks, if not guaranteed in their side deck, it's going to be a deck that would have to be incredibly lucky and piloted by the right person in order to take its way all the way to the top. Moving on to the last one. Now, the last one, again, is I think is a deck that's going to get undervalued. Now, I'm not saying it's the best deck around. I am just saying it is a deck that I feel will be highly represented from those that have played it previously and now want to relive its power, but also utilizing the brand new Ringo Worm, which can be utilized in Dragon Link as well. But that is, of course, Sword Soul. Now, this deck was incredibly powerful prior to all of the new stuff like Kashtiras coming out, and of course, Super Heavy Samurai, and the deck hasn't actually changed anything, just the format around it. That being said, the deck is still incredibly powerful, being able to set up multiple monsters on the board that will be able to interrupt and play through your opponent's turn, as well as also being able to back this up with multiple hand traps as well. Whether you're going to go down the Tenyu route, whether you're going to go down the Bestial route, it doesn't make much of a huge difference depending on the outcome, because the deck has access to play through certain floodgates, can also deal with certain floodgates and utilize some of them themselves. Stuff like Rivalry can be incredibly damaging alongside main decks of Nibiru. Heck, they can main deck Droll themselves as well, being able to produce level 8 synchros, level 10 synchros, and then if you chuck a Chaos Angel in the back of that that's been made with a light and dark, not only are their synchros unaffected by the activated monsters of your opponent, but they also cannot be destroyed by battle. And when you're looking at insane boss monsters, the only way you can deal with them is with a backed up Dark Roll No More, which I feel most people are going to be having in their side deck, or they're going to need to see that Santa Claus just to deal with a Chaos Angel, which is still then going to be backed up by something like a Baron, a Yugioh, or a Chenying. Not to mention Blackout and possible multiple hand traps with follow-ups for the next turn should anything go astray. So that is it. I've tried to keep this as condensed as I possibly can while also talking through my personal decks that I feel you're definitely going to be seeing at Nationals. I would expect that during the earlier rounds you'll see a much more varied deck. Like a lot of people might just be going there for a bit of fun, but I feel that the competitive area of Nationals and even YCF, I believe it's Philadelphia, will definitely be seeing 90%, if not 100% of these decks creeping and playing around the top tables, leading up to that final top cut call and then moving into Euros. I highly expect we will see a ban list before Euros. If we don't, I will be massively amazed. Anyway, I hope you found this informative and it's given you an idea of what you need to be preparing for, even though you only really have, by the time this video comes out, maybe a day or so to prepare for Nationals. Make sure you are versed in how these deck plays. Even if you've already chosen your deck and you've already handed in your deck list, it is not too late to prepare and find out how these decks play, because like I've said, the biggest chances are the cards you're already building for your side deck to deal with the top decks of Super Heavy Samurai, Kashtira's, Pearlys, Runics, you name it, can also be utilized against other decks. You just need to know what you need to take out and what you need to put in when you are siding for these particular matchups, and what to hit with your hand traps, what to let pass, and what to worry about. My final tip before I close this video as well is be afraid of Gamma. That is going to be in every deck alongside Droll and Lockbird, but also embrace Gamma. Gamma can be a very powerful defensive card for you, especially if you are going to be playing multiple cards before committing a monster to the board that will basically be saying to your opponent, Droll me, come on, do it, I dare you, because I will Gamma and then Omega rip your hand for an additional card. Anyway, as absolutely guys, thank you so much for watching, so much for listening. Till next time, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.